This is a story about those no one considered a threat, about the small fry that lived in the cracks of a cooling crust and fed on the scraps the masters left behind, about the tiny, the unnoticed, the nameless. They were not feared, they were not looked at, they were not listed among the strongest. And then one day the world tilted, and it turned out that the master of the stage becomes not the one who stood on it most spectacularly, but the one who knew how to stay silent and wait. To grasp the scale of what happened, you have to step back 165 million years. That is how long their reign lasted, longer than all mammals have existed, longer than we as a biological species have been present on this planet. They did not merely fill empty niches. They subjugated three worlds at once: land, sky, and water. On each of these tiers they had their own absolute master, before whom everything else bowed. On each, their own way of killing and their own way of surviving. They grew armor, perfected collective hunting, developed intelligence, rose above forests on long necks, and dropped from a height of 10 meters onto someone else's prey. And all this time, alongside them, beneath their feet, in burrows and under stones, another small fry breathed, our own distant ancestors. The question is not how they managed to hold on for so long. The question is what had to happen for such a perfectly arranged system to collapse in mere years. Listen, every empire that considers itself final, sooner or later runs into something it was not ready for. And what would you have done in the place of one who survived 3 catastrophes in a row and thought he had already seen it all? What would you do when the sky one morning turns cold and the earth beneath your feet turns dead? This episode is about how the small fry becomes the crown and the crown becomes ash. Listen, this story is about that. At the end of the Permian period, life on Earth did not merely retreat, it was almost erased. Not over millennia, but in a series of successive blows, each one finishing off what had survived the previous one. Volcanic eruptions flooded entire continents, saturating the atmosphere with poisonous compounds. Acid rains burned away leaves and skin. Percent of all species vanished from the face of the earth, as if nature had decided to reset its experiment. The therapsids, which for tens of millions of years had held the peak of evolution, turned out to be helpless before the new order of things. Their perfection had become their trap. Machines built for one world did not know how to live in another. Forests thinned down to scattered groves, oceans turned into dead zones, and the land resembled a desert after total destruction. Nature does not tolerate emptiness, and among the cracks of the cooling crust, beneath layers of ash, something was still breathing. Small, lizard-like creatures barely reaching the size of a cat scurried in the ruins of the old world. No horns, no armor, no impressive fangs, only an almost absurd ability to survive where everything else had died. They ate anything they could grab: insects, roots, the eggs of their neighbors. For now they were nobody, no one feared them, and no one paid them any attention. But it is precisely these unremarkable creatures who tens of millions of years later would turn into the new masters of the planet, the ones who would subjugate the land, the sky, and the oceans. You are on the channel Era Before Us, and this episode is about how the nameless survivors from the Permian ash became dinosaurs that ruled the planet longer than we have existed as a biological species at all. After the Permian catastrophe, the Earth resembled a wound that had not yet begun to heal. The climate lurched between heat and cold. Forests barely had time to recover, and food was scarce. Under such conditions, the survivor was not the strongest nor the largest, but the one who could eat anything and hide anywhere. From these small, generalist reptiles, a new lineage began to take shape: the Archosaurs. They were not yet dinosaurs, but they already carried their future inside them. The group split into 2 branches. One drifted toward water and gave rise to the distant ancestors of modern crocodiles. The other stayed on land, and from it came those we today call dinosaurs. For now they were small, inconspicuous players on a vast arena, claiming nothing beyond the chance to live until the next sunrise. Argentina, about 20 million years ago. Night. Between rocky debris a small shadow slipped. A creature the size of a large dog, with a long tail, swift legs, and sharp teeth. This is Eoraptor, one of the earliest known dinosaurs. He did not attack first and did not tangle with anything larger. He crept, froze at every rustle, hunted lizards, stole eggs from other creatures' nests, and could just as easily make a meal of a root or an insect. Omnivory was his main weapon, not fangs and not mass. If you had walked past him that night, you would not have stopped. Nothing remarkable. No one around, not in that epoch, not in that landscape, could have guessed that the descendants of this creature would one day rule an entire planet. Because at that moment the Triassic did not belong to them at all. The true masters of the land were the Rauisuchians, terrestrial relatives of crocodiles, nothing like the swamp animals we know today. Postosuchus reached 5 meters from snout to tail, moved on nearly straight, nearly vertical legs, and was faster than any early dinosaur. His jaws could tear prey in half with a single bite. The Rauisuchians occupied every ecological niche of large predators, from mid-sized hunters to true giants. They tracked, pursued, and left no chance. Early dinosaurs occupied the humblest positions in this hierarchy. Stay in the shadows, feed on what the giants found uninteresting, and under no circumstance get in their way. One wrong step, and the story of a particular Eoraptor ended forever. It seemed there was no path upward for them. But nature has its own logic. Around 20 million years ago, at the boundary between the Triassic and Jurassic periods, something broke in the workings of the world. The continents began their slow drift apart, forming what would become the Atlantic Ocean. Along with these movements came a new wave of volcanism. Lava spilled across areas comparable to all of Europe. Gases poured into the atmosphere. The climate lurched between abnormal heat and sharp cold spells. For the Rauisuchians, perfectly tuned to a stable warm world, this was a death sentence. They had become too specialized to retool on the fly. Some species died from heat and lack of oxygen, others from cold and starvation. The terrestrial masters of the Triassic vanished one after another. The only relatives who survived were those who had retreated into water, the ancestors of today's crocodiles, sheltering in rivers, swamps, and lagoons. But the dinosaurs remained. Why precisely they, scientists still argue, and most likely a combination of factors was at work. A more efficient respiratory system, elements of warm-bloodedness that help maintain activity during temperature swings, the small size of many early species, and in some groups possibly a rudimentary feather covering. The main result was simple. The throne was vacant, and someone had to take it. The dinosaurs took it. The Jurassic period opened with a wilderness of opportunity. The niches once held by the Rauisuchians were free. Nature does not tolerate such gaps, and in a geological instant, about 10 million years, the dinosaurs changed beyond recognition. They began experimenting with different strategies, sizes, shapes, ways of feeding, ways of life. Every successful find was locked in and passed on. One lineage bet everything on scale. Diplodocus grew to 25 meters from head to tail. Its neck, stretched upward like a construction crane, reached the crowns of trees no one else could touch. It did not need to compete for food at ground level. The food sat high above everyone else. Tons of flesh and bone turned its body into a fortress that was hard to take head-on. Nearby roamed Brachiosaurus, even taller, even more massive. Its head loomed so high that you could pass under it without stooping, as under a bridge span. Scientists have calculated that the heart of a Brachiosaurus must have been of incredible size to pump blood to such a height. Each of its steps shook the ground for several meters around. But the sturdier the fortress, the more sophisticated the siege weapon. While the herbivores piled en masse, the predators became more refined. Allosaurus, the chief super predator of the Jurassic, reached about 9 meters in length, possessed powerful jaws and a flexible, swift body. Many researchers believe he hunted in coordinated groups, acting like a coordinated team rather than a spontaneous pack. Here is how it looked in action. A herd of Diplodocus moves slowly through a thin forest. Among them, a young one, not yet at full weight. He keeps a little to the side, a little behind. The weak link always shows immediately. From behind the tree trunks, 3 Allosaurus emerge silently. One on the left flank, the second on the right, the third stays behind. 2 begin pressing the herd, creating chaos and forcing the animals off course. The third waits for his moment. The young Diplodocus tries to speed up, but the bodies of the other giants block his way. The Allosaurus behind lunges and bites into his flank. Blood floods the grass. The Diplodocus thrashes, tries to break free, but the 2 others are already tearing at his hind leg and reaching for his neck. The giant falls. The ground shudders from the impact. This is not chance and not chaos. This is a plan that worked. Victory here was won not by the force of a single bite, but by the precision of teamwork. The herbivores, however, were not about to simply accept the role of prey. Nature began experimenting with defense. Stegosaurus chose a different path, not size, but weaponry. Bony plates adorned his back, and his tail ended in 4 long spikes that, when swung, turned into a battle mace. Allosaurus circled him slowly, looking for a vulnerable spot, trying to come at him from the flank or behind. Stegosaurus turned to keep the predator in his field of vision. His brain was small, but the reflexes, honed by millions of years of selection, worked flawlessly. Allosaurus lunged, and the tail of Stegosaurus came into motion. A mighty swing, the spikes crashed with a crunch into the predator's thigh, ripping muscle and breaking bone. Allosaurus jumped back, limping. One miscalculation of distance, and the hunt ended before it could begin. Sometimes the prey wins. Above all this world, above the backs of the giants in the forest clearings, soared other inhabitants of the same ecosystem, the pterosaurs. Not dinosaurs, but part of the same great story. Their shadows slid across the ground, a reminder that the air, too, belonged to someone. The Jurassic became a time of endless experiments with sizes, diets, behavior, and ways of life. It was only the preparation for the next act. In the Cretaceous period, the dinosaurs achieved their absolute triumph, distributing power among 3 worlds, and in each one a different unchallenged ruler reigned. On land, the indisputable master was Tyrannosaurus. Edmontosaurus grazed peacefully at the edge of a clearing, surrounded by the rest of the herd, but had drifted a little aside, by a few meters, which turned out to be enough. From among the trees stepped the one no one was expecting. A huge head on a mighty neck, a massive body, short forelimbs. Tyrannosaurus was in no hurry. He walked with an even stride, like a fighter who knows. One well-placed blow decides everything. Edmontosaurus felt the vibration of the steps through the ground, turned around, but already too late. A lunge, and teeth the length of a palm sank into the victim's flank, slicing through muscle and breaking ribs. The herbivore thrashed, tried to break free, but the grip did not let go. The resistance gradually weakened and then stopped altogether. On land, he had almost no equals. He was not merely a predator, he was the symbol of an entire epoch's dominance. The sky belonged to Quetzalcoatlus. A small hunter dinosaur was chasing a lizard along a sandy shore, absorbed in his prey and not looking up. Threat, after all, always came from the ground. Above him, a shadow slid almost silently. Quetzalcoatlus folded his wings and went down like a stone, beak extended like a spear. The strike reached its target before the victim could understand anything. A wingspan of about 10 meters, a pair of mighty beats, and the master of the sky was climbing again, holding his prey in his beak. Above the shores and the plains, there was no one who dared contest this dominance. The ocean was controlled by Mosasaurus. On the surface of the water, a school of fish shimmered silver, until from below, out of the half-light, came a sharp lunge. A 15-meter body broke through the school like a torpedo. The jaws clamped shut, capturing several fish at once. Mosasaurus did not chew, he swallowed whole. Spotting a sea turtle, he made another lunge, and the powerful jaws crushed the shell. The crack carried far under the water. Sharks preferred not to argue with him over territory. Land, sky, ocean. 3 worlds, 3 masters, and the dinosaurs together with their closest relatives dominated everywhere. But size and power turned out not to be the only direction in which evolution was working. In the Cretaceous, a predator of a completely different type appeared. Velociraptor stood about as tall as a turkey, but on his hind legs there were sharp, sickle-shaped claws, and the brain, for a reptile, looked almost like a luxury. He did not hunt alone. Small groups of velociraptors tracked prey unhurriedly, tested its reactions, waited for the right moment. One distracted attention, the others came in from the flanks or behind. One velociraptor is a nuisance. 6 are a lethal threat even to a much larger and heavier opponent. Evolution stopped betting only on teeth and mass. It began investing in intelligence. The herbivores, by this time, had also turned into living fortresses. Ankylosaurus was the true tank of the Cretaceous. His body from head to tail was covered with bony plates. Even the eyelids were armored. And at the end of the tail hung a massive, bony mace. A young Tyrannosaurus, spotting an Ankylosaurus, decided he had found a convenient target, low, slow-moving, far from the largest of the available herbivores. He attacked from the side, where the armor seemed thinner, but his teeth merely slid across the plates with almost no effect. Ankylosaurus turned sharply, and the tail flew up into the air with a whistle. The mace blow landed directly on the predator's shin. The bone broke. Tyrannosaurus crashed down, howling in pain. In a world ruled by endurance, a broken leg is almost always a slow death. Ankylosaurus walked away, heavily lumbering. The predator was left lying on the ground. Triceratops chose a different strategy, strength in numbers. 3 horns, a powerful bony frill, weighed up to 1.5 tons or more. One adult Triceratops already posed a serious threat to a Tyrannosaurus. A herd with the young inside and adults around the perimeter, with horns turned outward, became an almost impenetrable fortress. An adult Tyrannosaurus circled the herd, looking for a weak spot, waiting for the moment when someone would break ranks. An hour, 2. The herd did not yield, and no one left position. In the end, the predator retreated, never having gotten its prey. Collective defense once again turned out to be stronger than individual power. 165 million years. That is how long their reign lasted. From the first inconspicuous forms of the Triassic to the last giants at the end of the Cretaceous. In that time, they survived the breakup of supercontinents, several climatic epochs, the appearance of flowering plants, and competition with new groups of animals. Each time they found a way out, changing size, diet, behavior, appearance. Some late dinosaurs differed so much from their distant ancestors that the kinship between them could barely be traced. It seemed they had found the final answer to the question of who this world belonged to. But ideal systems are especially vulnerable to what cannot be foreseen. One morning, the sky split apart. An asteroid the size of a mountain crashed into the region today called Mexico. The blow was of such monstrous force that the stones melted and the air ignited in the same instant. Gigantic waves rolled across the oceans. Forests caught fire from the heat that fell from above. Dust and soot rose so high that the sunlight began to fade. 165 million years of dominance were cut short in mere years, and possibly faster. But in this story, there is a conclusion that matters beyond a single catastrophe. The dinosaurs did not arise out of nowhere and did not vanish by the laws of some justice. They began as nobodies, small, unnoticed creatures hiding in the shadow of stronger predators. Their time came not because they turned out to be better than everyone else, but because a series of catastrophes, again and again, cleared the space for them. They survived thanks to a particular combination of accidents and biological features, and with each new crisis they found, again and again, a way to adapt. Evolution did not stop the experiment for a single second. And then, one blow from space. In nature, there are no eternal winners. The giants left, freeing the path for those who for long millions of years had hidden beneath their feet. The ash will settle, the horizon will clear, and onto the stage will step the new masters. The age of mammals will begin. Our age will begin. Please write in the comments how this story struck you. I really need to understand whether you were gripped by how, out of nameless small fry under the feet of predators, grew the masters of three worlds. What do you think? Did the dinosaurs earn their 165 million years of dominance? Or did they simply get lucky with a series of catastrophes that cleared the stage for them? And tell me